Hello there, kia ora. I just got back from Kirikiriroa-Hamilton, and it's been a fascinating journey for the last couple of days. And cold, really cold there. Ooh. You see, Hamilton City Council is currently in its long-term planning process, and part of that process involves verbal submissions. On Friday, there were two groups that wanted to make their voices heard and were holding events around these. One was about community groups, and the community group that had organised a submission around rangatahi, and it was fantastic to see them and other community groups celebrating the work that they'd done with cake. Not that I could eat cake. Thanks, Dr. Sasha. I wanted the cake, they looked delicious. But that's not the group that I'm going to talk to you about today. The group I'm going to talk to you about today that held a protest outside the council building is the Hamilton Residents and Ratepayers Association, which sounds like a boring organisation that gets complaining about things like rates and lawns being done. It's actually the organisation that had that 15-20 minute city meeting that issued execution writs to Hamilton City councillors, just not Andrew Bidder or Ryan Hamilton at the time, because they were in the crowd cheering along, I guess. So this was a group that wanted to set up outside, that had Hamilton City Council itself worried enough to make the councillors come in through the back entrance instead of the main entrance, because, execution writs. Also, one of their past presidents decided to write an email to Andrew Bidder, I think it was, saying we should take these Green Party girls out back of the bike shed and beat them. So, stand up guys. So, went along to this particular group and sat down with a coffee at a cafe nearby and watched what happened as dozens of these people showed up and kind of milled around for a couple of hours. Now, there was some really interesting individuals in there. The anti-5G crowd was there, the chemtrail crowd, fluoride crowd. I've always been kind of curious about the fluoride crowd in Hamilton because they say fluoride rots the brain. And if it's true, they're definitely evidence of that. But they don't drink fluoridated water because Hamilton City Council actually offers unfluoridated water to people who want it. Maybe it's something to do with unfluoridated water. I'm still working through that one. Anyway, they were there and, milling around. There was one Nazi salute that was very quickly shot down by some dude who was talking about how they needed to get rid of and deal with the treasonous traitors that had been elected to council. Sane, normal stuff. But what was really fascinating for me was actually this guy. This is Gary Mallett. Gary is actually a former Hamilton City Councillor who was in this crowd, working the room basically telling them about why Maori wards are evil and the Green Party is evil and it's all out to get them. He's hanging out with people throwing Nazi salutes, just chatting things up. Gary has some interesting history. He used to be a Hamilton City Councillor, and when he was there, he got in trouble for using homophobic slurs. He ran for the ACT Party a couple of times, including one time where he got in trouble for getting up on stage and making vomiting motions after he was asked on his opinion about same-sex marriage. And he used to be the ACT Party president, a role which I'm sure is completely honourable and has never ever had anybody bring it into disrepute whatsoever. Anyway, he was there. Gary has money, and that's not a bad thing. People have money, but there's a lot of money behind some of this campaign that's coming through, and it's definitely got to be coming from somewhere. And Gary is not the only former ACT-related Hamilton City Councillor who has ties with these community conspiracy groups. There was at least another one who was on council with him who is telling people they need to go out and start funding reality check radio. It seems to be that they've picked up on groups that are particularly susceptible to mis and disinformation that are already right-leaning or Reich-leaning in at least one case in that crowd, that are there willing to absorb information like this, which is a piece of propaganda pamphlet saying basically change is bad and scary and nobody should change anything ever, including things like getting in security cameras and trying to do things to stop traffic from going crazy and keeping kids safe outside schools. How dare they try and keep kids safe outside schools? It's a really weird bunch. And this was 2 hours of them basically milling around looking at their navels because they didn't really know what they were doing. They were sad and boring, really boring. It must be tiring having to live in another imagination somewhere, or another planet, or, wherever it is that their brains are. But this group is dangerous, and it needs to be really, really common knowledge that this group is dangerous. They still feel it's okay to threaten with violence and death elected officials who don't vote the way that this group thinks that they should. And this group thinks that 5G is going to be what kills you and that COVID isn't real. This group has problems. And there are groups like this all over the country, and they're being fed by people like Gary Mallet, who has the authority of being somebody who was elected to council, who knows what it's like on the inside and isn't there anymore, so he can push back from the outside, who has links to one of the political parties that currently runs the country. There is a network here that's really dangerous if we let it get away with what it's doing. So yeah, they might look like sad old individuals who are, complaining about speed bumps, but the reality is they could do some real harm to people if they don't start pulling back and if people don't start intervening with their weird warped view of the world. Because we've seen it happen in other countries and we really don't want to see that happen here.